join or just slightly delayed. So we'll give it another 2 minutes and then we can begin. So good day and welcome once again, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you on this first session of our positive peace training, which, as I'm sure you remember, will take the next 2 weeks. So I would like to begin by recognizing the raised hands. I think I have Paul here. So do you have a question, sir? Okay, you are muted, so if you could unmute yourself and go ahead. Your audio is very faint, I'm afraid. Can you please speak up a little bit?
For now, I don't have any question.
Ah. Okay, no, I noticed that your hand was raised. Are there any questions before we begin? Austin, yes, I see you might have a question. Could you please go ahead?
Yeah, I think it would be better you take us back a bit to the previous seminar, previous meeting. I think a little bit summary before the continuation of today's meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You can also make use of the chat function if that's okay. Yes, sir, please go ahead. Go ahead, sir. I'd ask you to unmute Mr. Olale.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know this has probably been addressed before. I just want another clarification. For those of us who are taking the course through Rotary, do we still need to, is there a plan to sort of harmonize the one we took through Rotary and this? Thank you.
Sorry, can you please come again? I didn't get the last part of your question. Is there a plan to harmonize? I didn't get the second part.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm just saying, for those of us who've taken the course 203, is there a plan to sort of harmonize the one we've taken 203 and this in terms of
Okay.
certification?
Okay. No, thank you. So the first question from Austin, that the first thing we're going to do is actually to highlight something, to go through a summary of what we presented the last time, and then as well as to go over the slides that are in the pre-recorded sessions, which we shared and hopefully which everyone has watched by now. And then we'll close out the session with a question and answer session. So I think I'll take one more preliminary question from Pascal. Please go ahead, sir, with your question, and then we can proceed.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Smith Omotayo Pascal. My questions are regarding the training on the platform, on the Rotary Academy platform. I started some of the trainings, the online course. I think I'm in module 3, and I was wondering, I know I saw there were 2 programs for participants. I started the first one, and there's the ambassador.
Sorry, Smith, we seem to have lost you there. Smith, you seem to have dropped off. So could you please use the chat box? Okay, we seem to have dropped you, so we will go on to Josiah. Please go ahead and make your submission.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right. My name is Josiah from Rivers State, Nigeria. First, let me appreciate you guys for this training. I will have shared. Okay. The question is a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we can't hear you clearly. I think you might need to make use of the chat function as well.
Can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you very well. I think, can you please use the chat function, please?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think the yes, it's a little bit better. Please go ahead.
All right. So I saw 2 training in that. The first is for the ambassadors, and then the second is for the positive peace. So are we programs, or is it just the ambassadors? This training is for them. That's my question.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'll address this question together with the one previously asked. When you log on to the ambassadors, the Rotarian platform, the module that you are completing is part of this 1-week training program. It's simply to make sure that we look at the positive peace framework using different perspectives. So you'll find that the pillars that are discussed in the Rotary platform are the same pillars that we'll discuss throughout these sessions. It's simply to make sure that there's a very clear understanding and that you get different perspectives and different ways of looking at the pillars and really being able to apply them in your communities. So please make sure, as we highlighted earlier, that you complete both the Rotary online academy, as well as attend all of the sessions that have started today, and then we'll have another one tomorrow, and then the last one on Friday. I think we'll take the last question from Adamu. Please go ahead, sir. Okay, you don't have a mic, so I think you might need to send it via chat. Okay. So without much ado, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the slides that were shared to you and are available on the online platform, the pre-recorded sessions. If you have any questions arising from the pre-recorded sessions, please type them in the chat box or raise your hand, and then we'll address them directly. So welcome once again to the Nigerian Ambassador Program. And this is the slide for the first webinar. Ordinarily, when we do an online ambassadors program, what happens is that it is a 6-week program during which applicants submit their applications, we send out notifications, and then during the weeks 1, 2, and 3, there'll be online webinars to learn about our research as the IEP and hear from various guests. So instead of doing this in 3 weeks, we have decided to consolidate it into 1 week. We already heard from our distinguished guests on Monday, and then we're now going to do the 3 different webinars one day after another. So the first session is today, the second session is tomorrow, and then the third session is on Friday. Week 5 is when we complete the test and survey, which I think we refer to. This will be sent to you directly via email, and then you'll be expected to complete it. After that, you will have 2 months during which to plan and deliver either a positive peace project or a positive peace presentation. And again, we'll hear more about this later. And then finally, when you've completed all these stages and delivered the presentation or project, you will be given your certificate and certified as a positive peace IEP ambassador. So to be clear, by participating in this training, you will be receiving 2 certificates. The first certificate is for being an IEP ambassador. And then the second certificate is for completing the 2 weeks joint training together with UNESCO ICPA. For those of you who joined us via Rotary, it's important to realize that the Rotary International and IEP have a global MOU. And the reason why this MOU is important is because Rotary does tons of grassroots work in various communities, both urban and rural, all across the world, impacting lives and improving development. IEP, on the other hand, does lots of research on the attitudes, institutions, and structures which sustain peace. We also do other research, which we'll touch on later, and we touched on Monday as well. So by combining our 2 strengths, we saw that this could be the best way to make sure that peace is developed in various communities. Even if you aren't a Rotarian or affiliated to Rotary in any way, this is still an important sort of relationship where you can use the IEP's research, you can use the IEP's work the IEP's positive peace framework in your own sphere of influence, in your own work, whether you're in the medical field or financial field or education or whichever other field it is. One of the things that we have done is that we have rotarized, if you will, the 8 pillars of peace. And I'm sure you remember we touched on them on Monday. The 8 pillars are low levels of corruption, acceptance of the rights of others, the free flow of information, a sound business environment, high levels of human capital, equitable distribution of resources, good relations with neighbors, and a well-functioning government. So we've decided to use these in a way that expresses itself well in Rotary activities. So you'll see in the ring around the 8 pillars of peace, the other areas where the pillars have been applied. So this is basic education, disease prevention, economic development, maternal and child health, peace building, water and sanitation, and the environment. So yeah, you'll see, as I was just saying, the different ways Rotary and IEP have worked together to use the positive peace framework to educate and empower Rotarians to build on their expertise and mobilize communities and undertake peace building projects. As we mentioned in the first session, this training is pointing towards being practical. So as you're listening, as you're interacting with the 8 pillars, as you're interacting with our data as the IEP, it is important that you bear in mind that the ultimate goal is to apply it to create change. Rotary and IEP have been working together for at least 6 years, and on their second MOU, we have activator programs for peace going on all over the world. So that's North America, Latin America, Europe, and Asia, as well as Africa, as you are seeing now and as we are participating in today. The IEP, as you mentioned, is an international think tank, and our main strength, our main work involves empirical, data-driven research. We are an independent organization, so our data is not arrived at by consensus. It is arrived at through research, by looking at the data. We, as I said, are independent. So we do not work on behalf of any government. We do not work on behalf of any issues-based or advocacy groups. We simply provide the data. And our key report is the Global Peace Index. It's now in its 15th year, and it ranks 163 countries according to their relative states of peace. And this is 99.7% of the world's population. And the reason why we measure these 163 countries as opposed to the nearly 200 that are there is because some countries don't have data, other countries are very small, and others are not yet recognized. So we cover these 163 countries, but it's still 99.7% of the world's population. The Global Peace Index looks at 23 indicators weighted on a 1 to 5 scale. And these indicators are spread across 3 domains or 3 baskets. The first basket is measures of ongoing domestic and international conflict. So this relates obviously to whether or not you're at war, either with your neighbors, with other countries, or yourself. The second basket is measures of safety and security. So this looks at issues to do with refugees, issues to do with crime, issues to do with terrorism, issues to do with incarceration rates, or the number of people who are in prison. The third basket is what we call measures of militarization. So this includes the number of armed service personnel, this is your police and your army, the number of small weapons and other weapons, and also how much money is spent by a government on its military. And this arrives at the measure which we call the Global Peace Index. In the 2021 Global Peace Index, one of the key findings was that there has been a deterioration in peacefulness for the 9th time in 13 years. It might seem like it's a small number when you look at 0.07% or 0.1% if you round up. But if you take a look at it, you will realize that even 1% of a million people is a large number. So when you say there's been a 1% deterioration in peace, you can calculate what it means in terms of the impact in terms of lives, the impact in terms of GDP, the impact in terms of cost that it has. And you also realize something important, which is more countries became more peaceful. 87 countries became more peaceful, and 73 countries became less peaceful. But still, the fewer countries that became less peaceful had a larger impact on the states of peacefulness in the world and caused even the majority peaceful countries to bring out this picture where we had this decline in levels of peacefulness. Improvements in peace were driven by less ongoing conflicts, less internal conflicts, and more terrorist impact. And then deteriorations were obviously on larger levels of spending on the military, lower levels of safety and security. And I'm sure you've seen across the world and in some of our communities an increase in things like riots and mass demonstrations and different crimes. The 10 most peaceful in the world, the 10 most peaceful countries in the world are Iceland and New Zealand. And then the last one, of course, is Canada, which comes in at number 10. And at the bottom end of our Global Peace Index, you will see that Afghanistan has the least levels of relative peace. And others who are in the bottom 10 include our own South Sudan, the DRC, and Somalia and Central African Republic. So you'll see that this has very, very serious implications for our region. And it's important to highlight again that when we say a country is number one, we don't mean that it has all the peace in the world. And then number 163 has no peace. These are simply a relative scale. So you'll find that there are some indicators or some things that are happening in Afghanistan that are a sign of hope, that show progress, that show development. And you'll also find that the country that is number one also has areas where it can still improve. So that is another distinction that we need to acknowledge and notice. I'll just skip over these slides because we have a very little time and move on to how Nigeria performs in terms of the Global Peace Index. In the 2021 report, Nigeria was ranked number 146 out of the 163 countries. Out of the 44 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria is ranked number 39. And then the region itself ranks number 7 out of the 9 regions. You'll find that the homicide rate in Nigeria is 34.5 per 100,000 people, which is relatively high. And then the economic cost of violence is 11%, which is an immense number. Because you can imagine if you can take 11% of your GDP, what it could do for education, what it could do for health, what it could do for transport and other things. However, as we mentioned, it's not all bad. There's been a decline or a reduction in conflict-related deaths by 16.5%. Nigeria's overall trends in peacefulness has been in a situation where there was an improvement around, especially from 2012 to around 2015, and then there was a slight decline that started there, which has continued until more or less until 2021. So this is a clear picture of the 23 indicators which we use to measure actual peace. You'll find that there's been an improvement in terms of political instability, police rate, violent demonstrations, violent crime, and access to small arms, and a few others. So this means to say that there is a better situation on these indicators as there was before. However, there has been a decline or a worsening of the situation in terms of the armed services personnel rate, perceptions of criminality, external conflicts, impact of terrorism, intensity of internal conflict, refugees and IDPs, deaths from internal conflict, and then the big drop, the biggest contributing indicator is the UN peacekeeping funding, which has fallen away. As we mentioned, the GPI is measured according to three baskets or three domains of indicators. And here you can see what the trend has been, that the biggest change has been in ongoing conflict. This is the one which has had the biggest impact, followed, of course, by militarization, indicated by the blue line, and then safety and security, which is the green line at the bottom. Another report which we issue as the IEP is the Ecological Threat Register. And this is in its second year, looking at 178 countries, which is 99.9% of the world's population. We use 5 indicators, and we combine the Global Peace Index and Positive Peace Index, as well as other measures to come up with the ETR. The things we look at in the ETR are measures of natural disasters. So this includes temperature anomalies, frequency of natural disasters, which of course has to be weighted so that we balance out the numbers across the world. And then we also look at issues to do with resource scarcity. So this is rapid population growth, water risk, and food risk. The measure also looks at 2 measures of ecological threats, which is the ETR score and then the catastrophic score. So this is an important distinction to make. The key findings of our 2021 ETR is that ecological damage is a major source of conflict. Conflict and resource degradation are strongly connected because in 11 of the 15 countries where there is a bad ETR score, there is conflict. So in countries where there is malnutrition, in countries where there is flooding, where there's food insecurity and population growth, you'll find that in those countries, there is war. You'll also find that in these countries, there are high numbers of IDPs and so on and so forth. Sub-Saharan Africa is very, very heavily prominent in this class, regrettably. ETR is very closely linked to resilience as well, with 30 countries with the lowest resilience and highest ETR score being home to 1.26 billion people. And what this simply points to is the level of exposure that our population have in terms of these ecological threats that we mentioned. In this ETR, we have what are called hotspot countries. And these countries are areas which are especially vulnerable and especially exposed. 2 of these areas are in Africa. There's the Sahel belt from Mauritania to Somalia, and then the Southern Africa belt from Angola to Madagascar. I think there'll be a map which shows, the belts that we refer to. And I'm sure you can see the areas that are highlighted in red there. Those are the areas where the hotspots, where you find that there's low levels of resilience, there's low levels of positive peace, and there's therefore high levels of catastrophic threats. The countries with the highest level in terms of ETR scores, and therefore the countries which are at the highest level of vulnerability, number 178 is Afghanistan. And then you'll find that countries like Niger, Burundi, Malawi, Rwanda, and Angola, and Mozambique from our own region are featured there. The countries with the lowest ETR score and therefore the most resilient and the most secure with the high levels of positive peace, you'll find that the Sweden's, Uruguay, Singapore, Iceland, Netherlands, Hong Kong, United Kingdom are represented there. Nigeria's performance in the ETR is that it ranks number 156 out of 178 countries. In the region, 44 countries, it is the 12th most impacted in the region out of the 44. And the threat, which is the largest, is water risk. With your permission, I will skip this slide as well and then move on to the next report. These slides will be shared via email with all of you so that you can look at these data points and really interact with them. On this slide, it's important to note that Nigeria has an ETR score of 4, again, with the highest threat being water risk. This slide, I think, is another one which is very, very interesting because it shows the forcible displacement in Nigeria from 2008 to 2020, which puts it at around 3.4 million. And you'll see that there was a very sharp decline from 2013 to 2014. And then from there, the numbers of forced displacement began to increase once more, obviously in response to the various conflicts, as well as the ETR threats, as we spoke about, like water risk and drought and food security. Another report produced by the IEP is the Global Terrorism Index, which is now in its 8th year and again measures 163 countries. The key result is that there's been a fall in terms of the deaths of terrorism by 15% for the 5th consecutive year. And this really shows the level of strengthening of the peace and security infrastructure of our various countries. It also shows the impact of media campaigns and social media campaigns to make it harder for terrorist groups to recruit. However, the impact of terrorism remains very, very large, and the impact is both financial as well as in terms of human lives and infrastructure and so on and so forth. The countries most impacted by terrorism are Afghanistan, Iraq, Nigeria, Syria, Somalia, and then the 5 others you see. So you'll see that our region, the most impacted countries, of course, Nigeria, Somalia, and then the DRC. In terms of the terrorism index, as we noted, Nigeria is very, very highly affected in the world. It's the 3rd most affected country globally. And in sub-Saharan Africa, it is the most affected country. And I'm sure I don't need to go into the details. You're well aware of the things that are happening, especially in the north and then some of the hotspot or challenging areas where these deaths and incidents take place. There were 411 separate terrorism incidents or events in 2019 and 1,245 deaths at the same time. Again, you'll note here that there was a rapid increase in deaths around 2014 and 2015, and then this dropped sharply and is continuing to drop, which is something that I think I referred to earlier to say that there's been a drop in deaths from internal conflict and terrorism. Here you'll notice the global layout or the global outlook for terrorism deaths in the world. And you'll notice that the areas in deep purple are the spaces where the most deaths have taken place. And you'll see Nigeria, there is, of course, a very dark shade of purple, which shows the grim and terrible impact that terrorism has had. So basically, that is an overview of the first webinar and the presentation, which was shared on the group. And now I will take a look at the questions and respond to them as best I can. I think the most frequently issued request was if the slides could be shared via email, which we will do. They will be shared both in a PDF format and in PowerPoint. So you can take a look at some of the slides as well as our reports if you can. Do we have any questions, please? Okay, I note that 3 hands are raised. So I'll just start with the one at the top. Yusuf, may you please go ahead and ask your question. Yusuf, can you please go ahead and ask your question? Okay, I can't seem to hear you since you're still muted. So DCC Chikukwa Mark, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My question will border on there was a very nice analysis of the Global Peace Index, the Ecological Threat Report. But I was looking out for a discussion on what could have caused or escalated the Nigerian situation, and possibly provide a solution as to what we may do to enhance peace in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you, sir. That's indeed an important question. And I think I'll share my screen just now so we could look at those indicators once more and look at the individual ones which caused Nigeria's position to be where it is. In terms of the solutions will be found both in the indicators as well as the conversations we have here today and over the next few days. And this is why the positive peace framework is so important, because it looks at our communities, at our governments, at ourselves, and at all the factors that are affecting peace in our communities, so we can find these solutions and make them work. So thank you for that question, and I'll come back to you again with a closer look at the indicators for Nigeria and the individual factors which caused this decline. Yes, Sir Babangida Mohammed, please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Sir, we are asking what are the ways economically. I think economically we can prefer solution of violence and conflict. But what are the ways? What are the ways? Because many governments, many systems have been coming and going by promising some economics, strategies, that prefer solution in this violence. But what do you think is the lasting solution, for instance, in Nigeria, in bringing an end to all these crisis killings economically? Thank you, sir. This is my question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. And I think I touched on the question a little bit earlier, and I think it's the reason why we're all here. And in a word, I think the solution is positive peace, because this is a complete look at the whole society, at all the factors that combine to cause development, at all the factors that combine to cause peace. So when we look at the positive peace framework, we're not only looking at economic solutions, we're also looking at social solutions. We're also looking at climate change solutions. We're also looking at environmental solutions. We're looking at health solutions. And we're making sure that everyone has a part to play and everyone is involved. This is not a thing for IEP. This is not just a thing for UN. This is not a thing for just government. It's a thing for everyone, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a banker, whether you're unemployed, whether you're into agriculture. This is the system or the framework which you could use to take a look at possible solutions. Sir, may you please stop sharing your screen? Thank you. May you please, guys, not share your screens or unmute yourselves before we give you the floor. So thank you very much for your question, and I think that's the answer I'll offer for now. Unfortunately, I won't be following the order in which you raised your hands. Unfortunately, I can't take note of it. So if you'll just bear with me, I'll just go with the order on my screen, and you can each have an opportunity to speak. So Bama Francis, Uchechugo, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes.
Please, the first thing I would like to ask is this. We're told we are to do a project at the end of this exercise, right?
Yes.
Now, there are two of us that are running a particular organization on this training. Is it possible we could do a collaborative project at the end of it?
Yes, definitely. You can collaborate and then obviously communicate your activities and results separately. But definitely, yes, we do accept and encourage that collaboration and cooperation.
Okay, but we will communicate our results separately.
Yes. Yes. Okay. It's important that both of you as well are working towards the results and the impacts that you state either of your presentation or your project. So this is what you need to demonstrate that both of you are actually working, and it's not one person working and then the other person's name is just on the project. So
one person, for instance, is an identity expert. I am in the security policing area, for instance. So we might have to merge identity management with security and policing and how it has to do with bringing peace. So that was why I was asking those questions.
Okay. No, it's a good question, and I think that there should be no problem with that. I think it will be a good project. We look forward to hearing from you. Ebere Obolade, please go ahead, ma'am. I've asked you to unmute.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good morning, everyone. I'm joining from Port Harcourt. My name is Ebere Obolade. I need a clarification. When you were speaking, when you were presenting, you made mention of there is Global Peace Index and there is Positive Peace Index. And then you mentioned some of the indicators, 23 indicators under 3 baskets. So I'm trying to clarify Global Peace Index and Positive Peace Index. Is it saying the same thing? or is different? I just need clarification on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is a very, very good question, and I will address it, I think, immediately. When we looked at the Global Peace Index, we measure what we call negative peace. And this is because usually when people are defining what is peace, they say it is the absence of war, it is the absence of fear, it is the absence of crime, it is the absence of violence. So in measuring it, we say minus war, minus crime, minus fear. So when we say negative peace, we're not saying it's bad peace. We are saying it is peace that is defined by saying it is the absence of something, because it's minus fear, minus war, minus violence. And this actual peace or negative peace is measured using those three baskets or those three domains of indicators, which is your ongoing conflict, which is your safety and security, which is your levels of militarization. However, after doing this for a few years, we then began to ask ourselves, no, we can't keep saying peace is the absence of something, because you can't keep saying that darkness is the absence of light, or that, or health is that light is the absence of darkness. You can't say keep saying, for example, that health is simply the absence of illness, because this peace thing has to be the presence of something. So rather than keeping on asking, what is peace the absence of, we ask the question, what is peace the presence of? And this is the attitudes, the institutions, and the structures which sustain peace. And this framework is, of course, distilled into 8 pillars, which we call the 8 pillars of peace. And these pillars in the Positive Peace Report are represented by 24 indicators, which is 3 indicators per each pillar. And I think we'll go into that into more depth in our next session tomorrow. I'm sure you'll also bump into it when you go through or watch the pre-recorded session. And I think I covered the 8 pillars earlier, which are things like a well-functioning government, low levels of corruption, free flow of information, equitable distribution of resources, respect for the rights of others, high levels of human capital, well-functioning government, sound business environment. So that is the difference essentially between negative peace and positive peace. There are other differences which we'll go into, including the fact that positive peace is a little bit future looking. It is a predictive tool. It can point to your future or act as an early warning, because when you see that there's a decline in positive peace, usually if no measures are taken, there'll be a decline in economic performance, there'll be a decline in inclusion, there'll be a decline in actual peace. And yet actual peace, or the negative peace, or the Global Peace Index, is not predictive. It is a snapshot of what would have happened in the past and looks at activities that have already happened. So, for example, if someone were to say, how come you haven't taken into account all the coups that have taken place in the past 2 weeks in our Global Peace Index? It's because they haven't been recorded yet. But next year, when we take another snapshot of the previous year, you'll find that these things would have been included in all our reports. So yeah, it's something that we'll discuss, as I said, in the future. So thank you very much for your question. Rotarian Kennedy, may you please go ahead and ask your question?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. On your presentation earlier, you talked about military spending increasing the rating of GPI on countries. So can you please expatiate on that? Because I know spending on military is necessary for government. So how does that really affect the GPI ratings of countries? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a brilliant question. And you raise an important point, which is that it is a critical tool for government to have safety and security infrastructure, to have safety and security personnel. In fact, it is actually more important in instances where you have violent conflict. And the reason why it's an indicator in the GPI is called. Someone has an open mic. Okay, there we go. And the reason is twofold. The first part of it is because when you have high levels of spending in military, it means that money has come from other areas. So instead of spending on health and education, transport and so forth, you are now spending more on military. And then this affects not just the actual money part, but it means that more members of your community are either in the police force or in military services compared to the rest. And this in itself leads to the second reason why it's an indicator, which is when you have high levels of military, it's either because you have high levels of crime and you have high levels of war, which is why you need the military in the first place, or these military and police and infrastructure are used to exert control or force on the population of that country. I hope that's a good enough answer for you. But thank you for your question. Joe Blama, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question that's relating to the project. Personally, I'm a student in Niger. I'm studying green hydrogen production, climate change, and energy. How can I carry on the project when I'm in Niger present state studying? Doing a master in climate change and green hydrogen. Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, I didn't get your question clearly, so I will respond to the parts which I got. What you could do is you could, if I don't respond well, you can type out the full question in the chat box, and then I'll attend to it. I thought you're asking about how you can implement the project. So what I'll say is the scope of the project is up to you. And also it doesn't just need to be a project. It could be a presentation, for example, to a church group, to a school group, to another class, and so forth. So there's a lot of latitude. And it's something that I think we will discuss more completely on Friday. So I can see that there are a lot of questions relating to the project. We'll discuss this in greater depth on Friday. So don't be too concerned about it. We'll provide clear instructions, and then we're also here to support you throughout the project. And it's also one of the reasons why we say you have up to 2 months to do it, because we know that you have other jobs, you're in school, and so on. So you need time to make sure that that you can complete the project or deliver this presentation. I see that Elijah Carter has said that we need more stepping down training to our youth. How can this be done? Yes, it's going to be done, and it can be done very well through collaboration with people such as yourselves. Now that at the end of this training, you will know about positive peace. You will know how positive peace works in various communities. And this will allow you to share this framework with others in different settings. As I said, you can put together a youth group. You can go to communities. You can go to communities and hold positive peace dialogues there, and so on and so forth. So definitely, this stepping down of the training is possible, and then we can do it. today a project. I thought we were going to write exams at the end of the training. You will have both. You will have both an assessment, which will just ask a few questions, mostly multiple choice. There won't be many questions, so don't worry about it being a tough exam. It won't be a tough exam. It's just an exam that allows us to see whether or not you've understood the positive peace pillars. And then the project or presentation will then be an application of the things that we have learned together. As I said, we will talk about this more expansively on Friday. Is the project going to be covered on video or just photographs? Either or will work. But as I said, we'll talk about the projects and presentations in depth on Friday. So don't be too worried or panicked about that. Abdul Salam Mukhtar, please go ahead, sir. Yes, I can't hear you, but I can see you're unmuted. Please go ahead. No, I'm afraid we can't hear you well, so you might need to make use of the chat function. I see a question there about the assessment at the end of module 1 and what its importance is. The reason why this assessment is important is because it allows us to see how well you have. Okay. Sorry, Abdul Salam, we can't hear you very well. I think you might need to. I think you might. I think I'm going to have to ask you to send something on the chat box. I'm sorry. I can't hear you. I'm not sure whether it's on my end or your end. Dr. Emasi Ojuku, please go ahead and ask your question or make your contribution.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, my question is a comment/question. I live in Southeast Nigeria, Anambra State, precisely Oka, and we have a peculiar problem here, and that is this fear of separatist agitators. This morning, the whole town, my state here in my capital city, is shut down because of fear of what is called and referred to as unknown gunmen. So I joined 20 minutes later because I had to drive from my house to a center to be able to get good internet access. Now, my question is there any way along the line, based on the different aspects of problems we have in Nigeria? In the Northwest, we have ISIS and Boko Haram. In the Southeast, we have separatist movement, IPOB, agitating for the so-called independence, Biafra. Can we, in course of our project, regionalize the problems? Because there are 6 regions in Nigeria. There are 36 states. In my state, what affects my state is different from what affects a particular state in the North northern part of Nigeria. So it's going to be state specific and community specific. In my state, we have this problem of IPOB and separatism, and the fear is real. I hope that we should, in course of time, regionalize this terrorism and the effects on the people, because the effect it has on my people here is big fear. To go out is usually a problem, and we don't know who announces the sit at home, but everybody complies because of fear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your question and your contribution. Of course, we acknowledge that these issues that occur in our communities, in the different areas, especially in Nigeria, you highlighted the Northwest, the Southeast. These are very real issues with very real and serious consequences. So this is something we acknowledge and take very, very seriously. And they're not sometimes solutions that come easily, and it's not a one-day process or a one-day event where we talk about it today and then tomorrow the problem is over. So we really do acknowledge that and acknowledge it. The part of your question which I think I got was that you are interested in regionalizing and really making sure that your project or your presentation takes into account these differences, the 36 districts you pointed to and so on. Definitely that is something you can do. And I think it will help make your work or your approach more effective and more relevant as well. So that's definitely something you should do, and we encourage in this project. So thank you for that. Alamas Timothy, please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, sir. Although some of the questions have been answered, but I have this one from the timetable that says community engagement or something like that from the timetable. I guess. So I will need to what does that mean? Are we going to be engaged in a community project like doing something in terms of children and conflict resolution?
I'm not sure I got all of your question, but I know it was to do with the project and whether or not you'll be involved in a community initiative for conflict resolution. I think that's what I got. I'm not sure. But as I said, we'll go more into what will be needed in terms of the project for the presentation on Friday. So I think today we could focus a little bit more on the first presentation and the first pre-recorded session. But we will be talking about the project more in depth on Friday. And in most instances, the objective is to make sure that your presentation or your project speaks well to the situation or the community you're in, and it's something that you're passionate about and something you can really deliver well. So a lot of the questions to do with which community should we target, who should we speak to, what can we cover, will largely be determined by you, and then the IEP just gives a broad sort of guidance in terms of in terms of what will be the minimum standard for you to get your certificate. So thank you for that question. We'll talk about the projects in more depth on Friday. We have Ibrahim Mohammed. May you please go ahead and ask your question?
Hello.
Yes, hello, sir. How are you?
How are you? Fine, sir.
My question is that, sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can. I can hear you very well. Thank you.
You make mention that at the end of this program, we have an exams. So how will be the exam? How the exam will be? The question number 2, is there any benefit after this program? That is all.
Okay. Thank you very much. Your first question is, what will the exam be like, or what will the exam look like? The exam will be a short assessment. It's not just for this week; it'll be for both weeks. And I'm sure you've also noticed that on the IEP site, there's an assessment that's there. It's simply multiple choice questions and questions with short answers, so that we can see whether you've understood the 8 pillars of peace, whether you know what the 8 pillars are, whether you know what systems thinking is, and how you can apply them in your community. So that is what the exam will be like. The exam is not very difficult. It will not be a tough exam. Our job or our intent is not to make things difficult for our participants, but simply to make sure that as much as possible, you understand the 8 pillars and how they can be used, as we said, as a lens to look at the world, or as a mirror to assess our own selves and our own organizations and our own communities. So this is what the exam will be like. It's just a few questions, multiple choice and open, to make sure that we all understand the 8 pillars very well. Doris Ikuchuku, can you please go ahead and ask your question?
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to say thank you for the opportunity. I want to ask a question. In respect to the email that was sent to us, we're asked to sign in if you are a new member to the IEP Rotary Club page. So which I have done. And there is also a module that I saw there, like a course to take. So I'm asking, are we expected to take the course like in addition to this while we are attending the program, or is it what we're expected to see in this course? So I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yes, you will be expected to take the course, and it is exactly what you will see in this program. So the answer to both your questions is yes. You will be expected to see the course, and it's in addition to what you will see in this program. As I said, our goal or our objective is to make sure that the 8 pillars of peace are well understood in different ways, and how they interact, how they can be used, whether it's in policy, whether it's in dialogue, whether it's in community work, whether it's in banking or agriculture. So we want to make sure that there is a very comprehensive explanation of these pillars, and that your understanding of these pillars is also very comprehensive. At the end of this training, as I said, you will be IEP ambassadors, meaning when you want to do a positive peace training, you should be able to explain even better than I can, as well as anyone at the IEP, to say these are the 8 pillars and this is how they can be used. We want you to be able to go out and explain and do training and do workshops and start projects and start policy discussions at all levels, at the highest levels of government, and right down to community level. So this is why there's this emphasis on different ways of delivering the 8 pillars of peace and making sure you understand them well. Obeta, can you please, Obiora, can you please go ahead and ask your question?
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Obiora Obeta from Port Harcourt, River State. And most of my concerns have been taken care of, but I just I wanted to know the sources of this data, the sources of the data, And again, when we talk about the economic pillar, among the 8 pillars, I was looking out for data that succinctly depicts the economically induced threats to peace in Nigeria, because it's obvious that the agitations, the insurgency, and many of the things that threatens peace in Nigeria are economically induced. So I was looking out for the data, but I didn't see it. If you can make it available, it will be very nice. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That is a good and important question. I think you asked 2 questions in that one there. The first is to do with the presence of economical factors in driving violence, and I think the data will be there in our reports. There's the economic value of peace in business and peace reports, which are separate IEP reports and available on our websites, which go into this interlinking relationship where violence leads to economic consequences, and economic factors themselves cause violence and conflict and insurgency and the things you mentioned. Another part is you asked about our data sources, and that's an important methodological question. IEP does not do any primary research. However, we gather this research from various reputable sources. So this is the UN, this is national statistical offices, this is organizations like Transparency International, this is different governments, and we use well over 60,000 data sets. And then we do our weighting and take a look at what would have happened and measure the countries in a fair and impartial way. So there isn't one country where we define, violence as one thing, and then in another country we define it in another way, or we measure it in one way in one country and we measure it in another way in another. We do this evenly and fairly and impartially across the world. So I'll be sure to share the link to the reports I mentioned, and also discuss this a little bit more towards the end when I start sharing my screen again. But thank you for that, Obesa. Good question. Hilary Ogbona, please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I believe you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, my question is, does the IEP provide available resources in terms of facilitation guides that peace advocates can use to mobilize actions towards peace building in their respective communities and spheres of life? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. It's a very good question, and yes, we do. And this support comes in various ways. We could begin with an individual or an organizational conversation, and you tell us what kind of support you would like. And if we could do a partnership, whether it's for a workshop, or for training, or for community conversations, sometimes we'll be able to travel, sometimes we won't. It'll depend, obviously, on what we're discussing. The second way we do this is that there are resources that are available from us free of charge. For example, there's a positive peace implementation guide. And this looks at how a project can be conceptualized from the community engagement, drafting the concept notes, to implementing the project, to monitoring and evaluation. So we have this implementation guide. It's free of charge and it's available to you to use as much as possible. You also find that on our website, the Positive Peace Academy you took has been translated into several languages, making it easier to, I think they're currently about 60 languages, making it easier to appreciate and to take down to every level, because of course we appreciate that not everyone speaks English, French, or Portuguese, or some of these languages. So that's another way. You'll also find that on our website and available if you just write to us and ask, is a workshop manual for positive peace, which looks at how you can conduct a 2-day, 3-day, 4-day positive peace workshops, the different, physical and thought activities, the different conversations, and the different examples that you could use in different contexts to deliver the 8 pillars. So thank you very much for that. It was a good question. And we look forward, of course, to sharing these tools with you. Umaru Abubakar, please go ahead and ask your question. Abubakar, Umaru, yes, please go ahead and then unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abubakar Umaru. I'm from Northeast Adamawa State, Nigeria. My question is that we are encountering a lot of attacks on daily basis as a result of herders and farmers conflicts and other communal clashes. So how are you going to mitigate the conflict over natural resources between the herders and farmers? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is a very good question. And I think if you go through our reports as the IEP, the herder and farmer conflicts were a factor that we noted in terms of driving conflicts. It was also a factor that we noted in terms of the ecological threat, which shows how when there is resource constraints or where there's competition for resources, you'll find that there is conflict. And this conflict has an impact on the resources, making them less and less. The second part of your question, or the key part of your question, was what can we do to address this? And I think the answer lies not with the IEP per se, but with the stakeholders who are involved in this conflict. So you'll find that the state has a part it has to play in terms of its safety and security infrastructure. It means that the community itself has a part to play in terms of how it handles this conflict between farmers and herders. It seems like a simplistic thing to say, but then when you have competition for resources, the best thing to do is not to pick up a gun or a knife or a spear. The best thing to do is to discuss, because you'll find that it might seem by picking up a gun you're getting what you want, but in the end you see that it costs in terms of lives, it costs in terms of the conflict getting worse and worse. So it's again part of the reason why we're doing this training, so that everyone has an awareness of the part that they have to play, of who else can be brought to the peace table to say, who else can have a conversation here. Should you be able to bring in, for example, companies that can dig boreholes and dams? Should you be able to bring in, for example, education institutions, so that you have schools and so on and so forth? So I think we'll go deeper into this again tomorrow, and begin to ask the question: what can be done? What role can we play? And who can come in and help contribute? And I think I mentioned something earlier as well, which is some of these challenges aren't challenges that can be solved in 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. It takes consistent effort. It takes consistent investment. It takes commitment from all these different stakeholders to make sure that things get better and better. So thank you very much, Abubakar, for your question. It was a great question. Dr. Peace Adango, please, sir, may you please unmute yourself.
Okay.
No, I think you've muted yourself again.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. I'm actually speaking from Rivers State, Port Harcourt. I'm the chairman of Justice of the Peace in Andoni jurisdiction. That is my local government. I want to really appreciate the presence of peace in my own community. But from my experience, I discovered that peace can only be achievable by the community, through the community leaders themselves. So if relatively we address this issue in terms of coming together, and reason out a way out, peace can be achieved. Now, looking at what is happening in the north, it's not just farmers and herders, it's also political. If you notice, during the dry season, there is relatively peace. But as soon as the rainy season commences, you begin to hear chaos and crisis in a very high level. I will want to advise, please. It's an opportunity for me to join this program, and as you can see, most of us are really taking the bulls by the horn to make sure we follow up this program. We want to, I'm a peace ambassador. I am not a Rotarian, but I'm a peace ambassador. It will be nice that every one of us, we call ourselves peace ambassadors, Rotarians, and peace advocates, and we just bear this as titles. We are not really committed to letting someone know how priceless peace is and how senseless terrors can be. So this will help us, because looking at the global index, Nigeria in that kind of record, to me, I see it as a big work for us. It's not only when presidency changes and then you say that one will guarantee the peace. No, it will commence from our various homes. And I want to submit by way of advising that every one member, I know I have heard people from Port Harcourt, that is from my state, Rivers State here, and they can also confirm that Rivers is enjoying the peace right now. Else I cannot be on my site, inside my car, having this training. But out there in the Middle East, Imo State, in fact my wife is from Imo State, their community is being invaded. That was since Monday and yesterday. And so it means that the community members, the stakeholders, they have so much job to do. That was how we achieved ours. We went to the camps of these persons, we risked our lives, we tell them what it is and how it should be. If you continue in this, there won't be an atmosphere for business, because my community is an oil and gas zone. So the expatriates are running away and you're saying there is no job. How will you get a job? So there and then understanding started coming in. And the new local government chairman is also a lawyer who understood the processes of achieving peace. And this now has been achieved. So I will follow up this program to the latter and also do the project. And my last question before I submit, how is the pairing for the project will look like? Of course, you said by Friday everything will be more elaborated. So I really thank you very much and happy to be here. That's just a piece of my own mind that I have been able to express in this manner. Thanks so much, Mr. Milton.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your question and your input. I'm going to distribute you. Thank you very much, Doctor, for your question and your input. It was very expansive and concise, and I think also looked very well at some of the factors and the real ways in which we grapple with these issues day to day. And I think it's important for me to say at this point that peace is not an accident. War is also not an accident. Whenever you see, these conflicts taking place, or the war taking place, or the shooting taking place, it just doesn't happen. Before there is shooting, before there is a conflict, you will see certain things. And this is why the attitude, the institutions, and the structures are important. You'll start to see that there is an equitable distribution of resources, for example. You'll start to see that there is language that divides people and takes away from their human rights, whether it's gender or ethnic or racial or between countries. You'll start to see that there are differences, or there's a negative, a downturn in terms of human capital. And when you see these signs, it's important that we respond to them early so that we don't get to the conflict situations. And I think uh, another important thing that you mentioned is that you'll find that in the dry season, there is no conflict. But in the rainy season, then there's conflict. And I think it's important that as stakeholders in peace, we begin to be aware of these cycles. And what this does is that it helps us be aware of what's coming in the future. So if you know that next year, for example, for farmers, you know that in every 5 years, you'll have a drought, you will have too much rain, you know that you'll have pests. So in the same way, in these peace cycles, if you know that in every 4 or 5 years we have elections, and sometimes there's violence, you have to prepare, you have to take measures so that your communities are resilient, so that your communities don't get themselves involved in that violence. If you know that every rain season we are fine, and when there's the dry season we are not fine, what can we do in advance to make sure that we don't get to that bad situation where there is the violence? So thank you very much for your contribution, sir. It was certainly useful. Next, can you please have, it says Al Bayan Interfaith Center. I've asked you to unmute yourself.
Oh, well, thank you very much, my presenter. My name is Ambassador Muhammad Jibrin Ndagi. I want to thank you for this presentation. I've listened very well, but my question is very simple. I just want to go straight to my question. I've listened to the doctor from Port Harcourt and the man that spoke also from Abia State. We want to shy away from religion, but thank God, the IEP ambassadors, as IEP ambassadors, how do we apply these 8 pillars of peace to the development of youth in our various communities, especially at this period we're in now? Thank you.
Ambassador, thank you very much for your question.
All right.
And I think it raises 2 factors that we need to take into consideration. The first is that of the role that religion plays in terms of building peace, and sometimes building the opposite of peace. And that is a very, very vital role. And it's something that we need to harness and take into account of. I'll be happy to share with you some of with all participants, the work that we do in terms of religions for peace. We did a report for it, I think in 2013 or 2014, and we're currently working with various religious organizations across the world, across faiths, people of no faith, people of every faith, to make sure that we all have a hand in building peace. And this is something that's very, very vital and important. The second thing is in relation to youth and the 8 pillars of peace. One of the benefits of positive peace is that it brings about greater inclusion. And another, as I think we mentioned, is that it demonstrates a high level of ownership in terms of peace and development in your community. So by simply going to young people or sitting down with young people and laying out those 8 pillars, questions can be asked in terms of, what is your vision in terms of each of the 8 pillars? A well-functioning government. Young people can say, we want a ministry of youth, or we want a youth club to be supported by the state. We want a youth policy for entrepreneurship. We want a youth policy for sexual and reproductive rights, for recreation, and so on and so forth. The examples are endless. For sound business environment, young people can say, do you know what? We want to be included in business. We want to be able to for example, start our businesses. So we shouldn't have high levels of licensing costs. We want to have a youth hub for entrepreneurs, or for farmers, or for whichever field they're in. You could look for another pillar, for example, such as free flow of information, and say, do young people have access, for example, to information on where they could learn more, information where they could get bank loans, information on COVID-19, information on HIV, the various things. You could ask, what are the barriers to getting this information? You could start to ask questions like, can unemployed young people or students afford, for example, internet or data costs? So you could look at each and every single pillar and ask different questions. You could look at every single pillar, and young people can say, that is the part that I can play. In terms of a well-functioning government, I can go and vote. Sorry, instead of low levels of corruption, I will not be corrupt. In terms of free flow of information, I will not spread fake news. Even if I receive it in the WhatsApp group, I will also not spread it. In terms of respect for the rights of others, I will not say things that are derogatory, or things that are unfair, or things that diminish people of different genders, different countries, and so on and so forth. So as I said, the 8 pillars of peace are for everyone. They're not just for us here today for the IEP. Young people, young women and girls, persons with disability, rural people, urban people, people at high levels, people at community level. And I think that's a very, very important question you asked, because it brings this out, I think, very well. So thank you, sir. The next question I think we'll take from Amaku Ewart. Amaku Ewart, may you please go ahead and unmute yourself? Amaku Ewart, may you please, oh, there we go. We can't hear you, so I think you might need to make use of the chat box, or maybe we could just give it another try. So if you could try and unmute yourself and.
Okay, I am on.
Very good. Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can, sir.
Okay, I was more concerned about communal crisis, and I thank Dr. Peace. He has said one or two things in regards to it. So if you look at, especially in Nigeria today, and we go into our rural communities, aside terrorism, we get to experience much of intercommunal crisis between communities, in our local communities. So with regards to this, my concern is with regards to conflict resolution. Do we have standard organization in Nigeria who could probably meet people from this community so that they could aid in one way or the other to assist in resolving conflict in this community, since most times our political leaders and allies do not really play the role we feel they should play in conflict resolution. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, and I think again it's I enjoy the fact that it's a question that really speaks to the things that are happening on the ground, the actual activities and challenges faced. However, I have to confess that I don't have that level of in-depth knowledge in terms of the organizations that could be approached in Nigeria. It's certainly something that I could note down and look at to see if there are any such organizations. But again, it's something that I would like to encourage, that the objective of this training is so that they can be practical actions, practical interventions, practical investments by ourselves and others to build this positive peace. So as much as possible, I think it would be a good thing if, instead of communities coming together, either they're politicians or no politicians, and pointing fingers at each other and pointing all sorts of accusations, it could be good to use the positive peace framework as a table where people sit down together and say, do you know what, our challenge is, or our conflict is about water, or our conflict is about political differences, or our conflict is around, and then craft solutions that are not violent, that build, of course, both positive peace and aid development. So I'm sorry that I couldn't give possibly the exact answer that you needed, but it's something that I hope I can look into and can speak to more clearly either tomorrow or on Friday. So thank you for your question, sir. George Clifford Obichefu, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Meeting. I'm George Clifford. I'm a Rotarian, the president of Project Global for Owerri Metropolitans, District 9142. Two things I want to ask. Okay, first and foremost, some of my members who registered for this program, they are finding it difficult to log into this session since Monday. So I was asking, what is the solution for them to join in? Because from the mail is saying that your login details cannot be shared with any other person. So how do we resolve that issue so that they can be able to join the training? And again, my other question for this peace thing we're talking about is, in Nigeria today, most issues that have resulted to conflicts, they have to do with one way or the other with security. I want to add, do we have any restriction? Maybe when we are going into the field for our 2 months projects we talked about, do we have any restriction on the kind of information we'll give out? So that at the end of the day, we don't want the government to come after us claiming we gave out the classified information. I don't know if you understand what I mean. So it's very important. Yes, it's very important so that we don't get ourselves involved. If, of course, you understand what happened with Twitter in Nigeria. At the time it was banned, now Twitter came back. We don't know the agreement they have with Twitter. You and I agree with me that most individuals these days are being monitored, the information they give out and the information they receive. So let us know if you have a restriction on the kind of information we'll give out while we are doing this field work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think those are two very, very critical points you raised. The first is, of course, to do with people who are experiencing challenges in terms of logging on. And yeah, I know that these things happen all over the world, not just in Africa. So it's part of the reason why we try to make sure that some of the sessions are pre-recorded, so that participants can get access to them at their own time, possibly when they have access to network, whether it's when they're at work or at home, or if they have to travel somewhere else. That's part of the reason. And I think if in all those cases individuals could get in touch with us, then we could come up with a solution for those challenges, because I do understand that there are quite a number of people were experiencing these challenges, and we'll take that into account when we're doing our assessments, as well as for the projects and presentations. And then the second part you asked had to do with of course the safety and security of participants in relation to handling IEP information. I will need to underline yet again that the IEP is a data-driven, evidence-based, independent, non-partisan think tank. Our data, all of it, is available free of charge and is not restricted according to any laws that we know of. So it's available for free. I think even in terms of the authorities you'll be meeting with and interacting with, you can very, very easily show them our reports. However, we understand that there are some practical implications when you're going on the ground, as you said, and we encourage you to be very, very aware of the different contexts you're in and to exercise caution. If you feel that it will put yourself in danger to travel somewhere and implement your project, I think it's something that you will need to consider very, very carefully. As the IEP, as I said, our data is available for free and widely. None of it is restricted. Of course, sometimes the indicators don't point the picture that we wish they did, but it is simply a reflection of the facts on the ground. And that is what we do as the IEP in terms of making them available. I hope I answered your question. I'm aware that there are people who've been having their hand up for a long while. There are many, many hands, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So just bear with us. We'll just go through each one at a time, and I will surely get to you. I think we have about 20 or so minutes left. So I'm sure if you can keep your questions or contributions very short, so that we can all get a chance to chip in and contribute. Peace. There's a lady whose device says peace. I've asked you to unmute. May you please go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, please, my name is Peace and I'm calling from Delta State. So how do we help the youth in our community to have this mindset of peace and also for them to run with the goal of peace? That's my first question. Then I also want the 8 pillars of the economic pillars to be sent to my email address. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be sharing the slides, not just from this presentation, but all presentations throughout the 2 weeks. They'll be coming through to your inboxes, and I see that someone has shared the 2020 Global Peace Index. I think the latest version is the 2021 Global Peace Index. So we'll be sharing the data, the slides, and you'll have access to these 8 pillars of peace and some in-depth explanations into them. Your first question had to do with young people, and this applies, as I said, to young women and girls, persons with disabilities, all communities that you can think of. The first way is by recognizing that they are important players in this peace puzzle. Because very often times when these conversations about peace are happening, you want to call the police, you want to call UN peacekeepers, you want to call government, but you don't want to call companies, you don't want to call churches, you don't want to call young people. And I think this is the first step, recognizing and acknowledging the vital importance that young people have in these communities. The second thing that can be done is by equipping them with these tools, equipping them with this knowledge, equipping them with these skills, equipping them with the attitudes, the institutions, the structures which sustain peace, so that they begin to see that what they are doing or not doing has an impact in terms of building peace. And I think this is something that is important, not just for youth, but for all of us, where we can all begin to see our role or our part to play. For example, when you're saying to a young person, we know you're unemployed, but don't go and commit a robbery. It's not just about the money you will make in that robbery. It's about a very real peace impact that you're having. You're having an impact in the whole community in terms of your actions. When we're saying young people should have access to, for example, education, should have access to health, these are things that have a real peace impact. So I think this is, again, something we need to really have our eye on, so that we know the impact, so that young people themselves know the impact that their lives and activities have in terms of peace and development. So thank you very much for that question. Next, I will ask Isaac Okpen. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, Isaac. Your microphone is breaking. So you could turn off your video. Maybe that will help us a little bit.
Fine now.
Okay, I can hear you a little bit better. Please go ahead.
Okay. In the course of peace building, we may be saddled with the responsibility of peacekeeping. So, taking the header farmer clashes on the one hand, then kidnapping and ritual activities on the other hand. How do we settle this? Because if you go to mediate between the headers farmers, you may be asked to settle the dispute having been given the problem. Okay, this is what we need to settle this. So how do we tackle this in the face of a poor governance? Considering that our government gives deaf ears to so many things and kind of politicize every security.
Thank you very much for your question, Isaac. And I think, as I said, one of the key things that we are trying to achieve in this training is that so that we can understand the different factors that drive not just violence, but also peace, so that we're not just coming in with approaches that take away violence, that take away fear, that take away crime, that take away conflict, but approaches that bring more than that, that take away the causes of violence, which is why we focus on these attitudes, institutions, and structures which build peace. So, to address your question, I think the best way we could do this is, when looking at all of these different instances, you look at where the attitudes, the institutions, the structures are weak. What institutions could come in, for example, to help prevent or manage or reverse the conflict? You know, whether it's in terms of, for example, a sound business environment. There are businesses that could come in and provide services that address some of the concerns of conflicting parties. There's information or views that could be reversed in terms of, how people think and feel about each other across the different lines that we draw. So this, I think, is a very, very important factor. And I think tomorrow, when we are talking about the 8 pillars of peace, is something that we can go into in greater depth. So thank you very much for your question. Next, could we please have Gracious Sadiq? Can you please go ahead and ask your question? Gracious,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Milton. Finally, thank you for, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay, thank you so much. Finally I got the opportunity to speak. I want to really appreciate you for all you've been doing and how you've been putting justice to the concept of peace, positive peace and negative peace. When I had question, I think some of the questions have been answered during your answering other person's questions, but just to make a few contribution that the concept of peace, the importance of peace cannot be overemphasized. And when we talk about peace, most especially positive peace, is everybody's business, is everybody's responsibility. From the religious end, from the media, from the government, from the home, the students, the youth, from all facets, we all have roles and responsibilities to play to ensure that there is peace and that there's positive peace. If you look at the various pillars of peace that you have shared, you can use it to tell what positive peace, even from your definition also, what positive peace is all about. And if we need to achieve positive peace, things that we need to do as a society or as a citizen of the country. Peace is, just like you said, is not something you just wake up to see. It's something you plan for. It's a deliberate thing. We can actually achieve or attain peace if everybody consciously put his or play his or her respective roles. Like I have heard somebody talk from the religious perspective. As a religious person, how can you? Yes, in the concept of peace, you must respect diversity. You must accommodate differences. Otherwise, there is no peace. Now, Nigeria is a country that has about 250 ethnic groups and over 50 languages. How do you expect that we all should think alike? That we all should talk alike, or we?
I'm not sure whether it's just myself, but I think we seem to have lost Gracious in the middle of her very, very, I think, good interjection, which is we all have a part to play, and I think it underlines one of the important aspects relating to positive peace, which is what we are aiming for or what we are going for is unity, not uniformity. We don't need to dress alike. We don't need to think alike. We don't need to act alike. We don't need to, all believe the same things and be the same. But we do have to be unified and working together towards building this thing called positive peace, especially when we are bound either within a country or within a community or another border. We need to make sure that we acknowledge that there's more to work towards together, and there's more to be gained by building peace rather than emphasizing these differences, emphasizing these different fault lines. So thank you, ma'am. I think we're very sorry to have lost you in the middle of your presentation. Next, could I please have Yusuf Abdallah? Please go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. First of all,
yes, good afternoon.
My name is Yusuf Abdullah from Borno State. I really appreciate research program because it's used to impact in a community like my community here, Maiduguri, Borno State. because we have more of victims that issue that had happened before, the issue of Boko Haram, ISIS, other things like this. So I would like to give some observations. Like we have to get more exposure on this training, because we have to come here, people, so that we learn, give them all what we have planned in this program. And the suggestion I have is this thing has to be practically, I mean physically, not virtually like this, because some of us are having network issue. Some of us
Sorry, Yusuf, are you there? Oh no, I think we Yusuf, but okay, but I think I was just beginning to hear him talk about the importance of actual physical face-to-face training, which is something that definitely we are hoping you can carry out as IEP ambassadors once you're certified, on the ground, person to person, with very direct contact and interaction with the pillars of peace. This will take care of issues, for example, to do with different languages. This will take care, for example, with things to do with network challenges and connectivity. So we're really hoping that once you're empowered and equipped with these skills, once you're empowered and equipped with this knowledge, once you're empowered and equipped with the certificates, you'll be able to go out either in partnership with us, in partnership with other players, or even on your own in your home communities and home organizations, and contribute actively towards positive peace. Next, I will ask Juliet Okachi. Please go ahead and give your very short question or contribution.
Good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate you and the whole team for the training and all that you have taught us these few days. I want to beg that, just like you said, that you're going to send all that you've taught us and you're still to teach us to our emails and all of that. So I want to say that the question I had has been answered, thank you. But I want to add that, you know, I have had the opportunity as an agronomist to work with farmers. I've had the opportunity to work with farmers in rural areas, and I want to say that hunger unemployment is a crucial issue that should be tackled. The youths in particular should not be overlooked, and it starts from the home. Today we see in schools, secondary schools, we see students stabbing one another. How did they get into schools with weapons that they use? Boarding schools, day schools. How did they get into schools with some of these weapons that they use in inflicting injuries in their mates? So I'm saying that it starts from our homes. Parents fighting at home, quarreling at home in the presence of children, the anger, the outrage, difficulties, unemployment, all of these things are what keeps compounding. And at one point, it begins to boil. Recently, the crisis in Jos, I remember I was in Plateau, I was in Jos during that period, in Rukubar area there. You could see what was happening in Terminus Market, how people were running, how people were shot and killed at that period. So All of these things are just compounding. Moving on the street, you even see stress, frustration, tension, hunger on the faces of people. I feel that it's all collective. It starts from the home. Let's in our daily communication with one another, with our sisters, with our brothers, with our children, let's begin to tell ourselves, to love one another. You know, I feel that it will get better. It will get better. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for your intervention, and I think it highlights again, the ownership of positive peace. Everyone has a part to play in the home, in the schools, in the churches, at every level. So thank you very much for that. It would appear that we have reached the end of what our appointed time is. So if there's anyone who needs to leave for another engagement, you are free to do so. I think I will take a few more questions and then close out the meeting, I think, in another 5 or 10 minutes. So if I ask you to unmute, please give a very, very short question or a very short intervention so we could cover everybody. Ambassador Peter, Asa, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, everyone. I am Ambassador Peter Issa from Kogi State. My question goes thus. I just want to understand when we are to carry out the tax on the link that was sent to us. Is it after the class or before the class? On our
Okay,
logging
thank
in.
you. Oh, sorry. I think I cut you off before you had finished. My apologies for that. Would you like to complete your question? Okay, no, but I think your question had to do with the links and the pre-recorded sessions. We would like you to watch them before the live session. So, for example, the first webinar, which was available on Monday, we wanted you to watch that before this session. And then the second pre-recorded webinar, you can watch before tomorrow's session. And then the last one, you can watch before Friday's session. So that when we come into these sessions, what we're dealing with isn't so much delivering a presentation, but answering questions that you may have had or you have about the positive peace pillars or systems thinking or any of the data in our reports. So to answer your question, before each session is where we would like you to have watched the presentations. Clement, please go ahead and unmute yourself and share your.
Yeah. Hello, meeting. Hello, meeting.
Yes, hello, sir. Hello, sir. How are you?
Fine. Short question. For those on the field, we realize that the breach of peace sometimes is as a result of breach of human rights. And sometimes when people are agitating for human rights, the realization of human rights, it results into breach of peace, particularly from the state actors. So how do we, in implementing this project we are doing, how do we integrate human rights into the 8 pillars of peace and then ensure that there's mutual between peace and human rights?
Thank you very much. I think one of the best ways to answer your question is by highlighting that respect for the rights of others is one of the 8 pillars of peace. And this is because the factor of human rights, the aspect of human rights is vital in terms of safeguarding peace and facilitating development. So I think we'll go into this more concretely tomorrow, and how the relationship with human rights and all the other 8 pillars of peace, brings about positive outcomes in the communities, and will hopefully reverse some of these conflict situations. As you said, these conflict situations are never simple, and bringing in these 8 pillars of peace, this positive peace approach, is another tool that adds to the efforts that are already in place, and makes it easy to build upon. So thank you very much for your question. um, as I mentioned, our time is already up because we're supposed to stop our workshop at 2. So for those who need to leave or would like to leave, please go ahead. I'm simply just trying to answer a few more questions, because I know there are some in the chat box and some still with their hands up. So we're just giving it a few more minutes. But if you'd like to leave, please feel free to go ahead and do so. I noticed that there's a question in the chat box about who came up with the 8 pillars of peace. I think we'll go into that tomorrow, and how the pillars were developed, how they're maintained, and why we are so confident in saying no matter where you are in the world, these 8 factors will bring about peace and development. So I think we'll go into that tomorrow. Raymond Emmanuel, please go ahead and then ask your question. Okay, I think can you please turn off your video? It might help. Yeah. Please go ahead. You are now muted, so you need to unmute yourself, and please go ahead. I'm afraid that I think we have a bit of an audio issue, so I think you might need to make. There we go. Yes, can hear you a little bit now. Okay, I think we've lost you again. And then I will take one final question. Paul Uche, please go ahead. Paul Uche, please go ahead, and you're muted, so we can't hear you, sir.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, please. I have to address a concern by somebody that it is hard to recognize some organizations that are deeply involved in peace building and conflict in Nigeria, and which you said by next week, you will, maybe next meeting, you will have to find out whether there are some organizations. But I have to say boldly that we have a lot of them. Last time in Owerri, we had a meeting of conflict de-escalation, and before for police community community policing in Nigeria, in Owerri, organized by National Peace Academy and the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, Abuja. It's a very standard organization for conflict de-escalation and peace building in Nigeria. We have an institute, we have an academy too, to train peace advocates. And my own organization, Peace Advocates and Practitioners of Nigeria, is also also on ground to educate and encourage solutions registered by the Corporate Affairs Commission, and we are basically involved in peace research and conflict resolution, particularly in this part of Nigeria. I mean, Southeast geopolitical zone. So those of us in Abia State University, in our Peace and Conflict Unit department, we are also training students, young people towards peace building and conflict resolution. So definitely, we have a lot of role to play, all of us, to make sure that we build peace. So your organization can also partner with me, peace advocates and practitioners, PAPO. We call ourselves PAPO in this area of peace building. We are ready. We are ready at any time. So what I need to do is to maybe have a way to continue to work with you people so that we can all team our hands together, join hands together to make sure that there is peace and then reduction of conflict at its minimum. Thank you very much. I appreciate this very wonderful efforts anchored by Rotary International. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your contribution. And I think, as I said, my apologies for not being as familiar with the Nigerian context. So I know always there will be so many organizations that are willing to contribute, that are ready to contribute, that act at so many levels. You'll have small community CSOs, and then you'll have some that operate across districts and provinces, and even at a national and international level. So thank you very much for coming in with some examples for us, as well as making yourself available to work with myself or any other of the participants who are here. So thank you for that. We still have a few more hands, but if you'll allow me, in the interest of time, and also because I think we had quite a few numbers who dropped out. So tomorrow, when we begin the session, we will start with outstanding questions. So if you could keep them short and have them ready, so that the first 10 minutes we spend addressing, the questions that we had today, including some of the ones on the situation of Nigeria in terms of the Global Peace Index, the Positive Peace Report, and Global Terror Index, and some of the factors, even the economic indicators, and so on and so forth. Allow me once again to thank you all for your attention, for your commitment, for your time. We really appreciate it. And allow me again to underline that we will share the recordings of these sessions as well as our presentations with all of you, so that you can take a look at them in your own spare time and develop questions if you have, and start to think about interventions and partnerships and other things moving forward. So thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all a very good day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.